Hello, my name is Howard Snow, and my project and presentation is about the 5 generations of the workforce. Right now, there are 5 generations in the workforce for the first time in history, and this is creating a generation gap. These are 5 generations with varied work styles, skills, attributes that are all working together for the first time. 75% of managers face challenges managing multi-generational work teams. They have to understand generational work preferences and adjust leadership styles to address the generation gaps that are currently there. A little background: in 2015, there was a Pew Research study that showed that millennials at the time were the dominant demographic in the workforce, slightly edging out the Gen Xers, and followed closely by baby boomers. That's changed somewhat since then. So we don't have a current 2021 survey and study yet that show the exact numbers, but basically since then, Gen Zers have entered the workforce to the tune of somewhere between 5 and 12,000, while baby boomers and matures cycle out of the workforce. Let's get into the 5 different generations that are in the workforce. The first is the matures, or also called the silent generation, also referred to as the World War II generation. They're born 1945 and before, and some of the work characteristics: they're traditionalists, hard workers, respect authority, prefer hierarchical work structures. So they have a very rigid structure that they prefer. Appreciate distinct guidance and instructions. Then there's baby boomers. These are folks who are born between 1946 and 1964. Some of their work characteristics: they're optimistic workaholics. They look for team agreement. They desire active engagement, and they're highly competitive or educated. And that brings us to Generation X, my generation. We're born between 1965 and 1980. Some of the work characteristics of Gen X: autonomous workers, like working at our own pace, value a work-life balance, expect flexibility in the workplace, adapt well to change, and technological savvy. We've seen the technology come, and we were here before some of the technology was there. So millennials, born between 1980 and 1996, and this is the largest segment of the US workforce right now. Some of the work characteristics: multitaskers, value collaboration, open-minded, socially conscious. That brings us to the newest entrant to the workforce, Gen Z, born between 1997 and 2012. These are individuals who are recently graduating from college, and this is the most ethnically and racially diverse and best educated group of the generations. Some work characteristics: they were born into technology. They've never known a world where technology wasn't heavily involved in day-to-day living. They're extremely well informed and frugal, value independence. Understanding generational differences. To make this 5 generational gap work, leaders really need to recognize their own biases toward different generations and avoid biases. Manage the influences of generational stereotypes. We've all heard some of those stereotypes. educate themselves and their team about generational differences, recognize each employee as an individual. And some of the ways that leaders can deal with the different groups is by using different leadership styles. Lewin, famous in the field of psychology, came out with a landmark study in the 1930s and identified 3 leadership styles: autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire. Autocratic: make decisions with little input, dictate processes and methods. Democratic: involve employees in decision-making, provide guidance for employees. And laissez-faire: freedom in how and when employees complete work. Applying these leadership styles to the generations. Autocratic approach can be used for the matures and or World War II generation. They may find it helpful to have this style. Democratic approach may work better for baby boomers, and a laissez-faire approach may be best for Generation X. A mix of leadership styles may be more appropriate for millennials and Gen Z. All employees, though, should be given a voice regardless of age or tenure. Before we hit conclusions, I'd like to dig into some of the literature review. So there were a lot of common themes in the literature reviews. No one generation is so different that core leadership skills need to be radically changed. That came up time and time again. Their core leadership skills really should be supplemented. There are many disagreements among researchers as to the exact starting and end points from one generation to the next. There's many different names. There's almost nobody agrees on those exact names. Everybody is a little bit different in how they define that. There are some practical implications here. Research results can be utilized by companies to find key points of interest in leading and managing multi-generational work teams. They can leverage, this can be leveraged to find positive outcomes rather than unfavorable outcomes in the absence of this information. Limitations, there are a lot of limitations, especially when it comes to Gen Z. There's just not a lot of information out there yet. Right? There's not a lot of peer-reviewed information. Most of what is out there has been collected from research institutes, survey centers like Pew, Gallup, U.S. Census Bureau, AARP. That's really what's out there. There just hasn't been a lot of scholarly literature reviews yet for Gen Z. Future research areas definitely need more in the way of Gen Z information. Little is known about their preferences, their methods of learning, capabilities. More research is also needed to understand the multi-generational team dynamics. Conclusions, there are 5 distinct generations in the workplace, and managers are having problems with these generational gaps. They got to recognize the differences between these generations. They've really got to understand that these generations should be leveraged to help the organization grow and become more strong. Good leaders will use an appropriate and effective combination of leadership styles and tools to help communicate with each generation effectively while limiting biases. Can't have biases about these generations. Leaders will also strive to adjust and evolve their leadership styles as required bring out the best in members of each generation on their own team. And they've got to understand that there's not one all-encompassing approach to managing multiple generations in the workplace. That strategy used today will need to be adjusted to accommodate the needs of future workforce as demographics continue to change. Thank you.